It's Thursday, February 7th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, Town Council President Jim Crocker joins us for a preview of tonight's meeting. We get an update on the sand replenishment project at Blish Point, and a preview of the restaurant guide that can help new businesses navigate through the town's regulatory applications and permit process. First up, municipal news and notes. The Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization, a collaboration of local, regional, state, and federal transportation officials, is seeking public input for all Cape-wide traffic concerns, from major traffic areas like the roadways surrounding the Bourne and Sagamore bridges, to smaller roadways located on the Mid and Outer Cape and Hyannis business districts. A listening session will be held today, February 7th, at the Hyannis Transportation Center, beginning at 2 p.m. The session will include a presentation and time for questions and comments. To learn more about upcoming meetings and participate in the online survey, visit www.capecodcommission.org. Town Council President Jim Crocker highlights some key agenda items for tonight's 7 p.m. meeting. It's Town Council tonight, and with me today, Jim Crocker, President of Town Council. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Paula.
First time here as president.
Boy, it's an earth-shaking moment for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lots of things happening for tonight's meeting, though. So let's start right at the top. First time ever, community preservation funds going to outside of the town of Barnstable.
Yeah, it's very rare that we have this opportunity. We have, of course, checked with the state to ensure that it's a proper procedure for us to do so. But we're being asked to contribute $250,000 to a home, and I have to get this correct, Friends of Relatives with Autism. And it's a group effort to build a adult autism home, I believe for up to 8 bedrooms in the town of Dennis. And it's a number of us on the peninsula, the middle of the peninsula, making a contribution to make this come true. It's really about trying to get some of these nonprofits, too, to move around the region and to be appropriate for their location.
Right, and this importance, again, you know, we've had lots of conversations about housing.
Yes.
On this show, and it's housing for all.
Without question.
So, you know, making sure that people with challenges out there have a decent place to live that's, again, bringing all the nonprofits together and moving them around the region.
Well, absolutely. We're a community of one. All you really need to do is understand the problem the parents face in this situation, and you'd be very compassionate to the problem. It's a huge, lifelong problem, and it's one that will comfortably be resolved with a community home in this environment.
That's great. And we also have the Highway District Business Map coming up again.
Boy, oh boy, that might be the hot button of the night.
Right.
Highway District Map is really a very small changes to it. What was happened at the time the highway business came before the committee, it was looking at first the use of highway business, which we've now handled and addressed and have amended. And now we're talking about the map, and should it go out 3 parcels in this direction and 4 parcels in that. What people forget is we're looking at it on the corridors of Route 28 and on West Main Street. Anything on Route 28 needs to go through a state curb cut to have any kind of an opportunity to build. So there isn't any rampant growth, there isn't anything crazy here. It's very controlled, it's very permitted. But what we acknowledge in that is we have leads of our sewer system that come down to that part. So we have plenty of examples where private development has attached itself to our community septic system at no expense to the town itself. So when you pick these corridors of main transportation, you're doing it for the purposes of infrastructure. We know the bus routes are there, and we know there'll be a lot of opportunity for housing, again, housing.
Right, and talk a little bit about the economic development. You know, the town really does need revenue year after year. So by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 parcels, this could actually increase revenue as well as a tax base.
Paul, I have to thank you for bringing that even up. The discussion has to always be with the councilors about how do we get, as they call it, new growth dollars. New growth dollars allow us to do what is necessary in the budget to keep all these projects alive and turn around and deliver services to our taxpayers. If you don't get new growth dollars, it's old growth dollars to some of us old folks. So it's about either taxing the people we have or finding new ability to promote safe, sound, ecologically safe advancements and new growth dollars to provide new money for the Coffertures.
Right. And we also have, you're going to take up the Airport Commission. You have to wait on that for their 49-year lease.
Yeah, we're extremely excited about that opportunity. The council played a role in trying to bring that to some closure. As you know, the airport has always had, since the beginning of time, ups and downs with economic turmoil being a secondary form of transportation. And so the airport needs this revenue, they call it outside the fence revenue, to really help funding. And it's been projected that the new lease that's come forward will produce as much as a 15% increase on their annual income, which is, there isn't another project they can pull forward that would make such a dire change in their economic situation. So we're looking forward to resolving that with them. Hats off to our Assistant Town Manager, Andy Claiborne. He worked hard with this group, and we had a whole bunch of people from the town add in a compliance group to look at this lease and go through the process. But we're at the final stages. The airport was requested to give another 60 days to the new tenant to resolve some of the finer details. The council will not look at this until it's completely wrapped up at the airport level.
Right. And then one of the other ones that's pretty exciting is the Joint Base Cape Cod. You're looking to have some money diverted to that to address wastewater.
Well, you're hitting all my favorite buttons today. This is another hats off to our Assistant Town Manager, Andy Claiborne. He opened the door over at Joint Base Cape Cod. For people who don't know, he was a commander at the base before we were fortunate enough to hire him. Mark Ells really saw a value in Andy and brought him into his fold. Mark Ells and Andy approached us with the idea that perhaps we could do something with Joint Base if we were to look at that direction for servicing and for sending some of our affluent. And what happens is Joint Base, as we all know, they keep reducing the operations there. And when you have septic and you reduce operations, you make the septic non-perform. Septic needs flow in order for performance. So they have a continual problem over there where they can't get enough flow. We have a continual problem where we'd love to give them some flow. So Joint Base Cape Cod, because of the landmass that's there, people forget, Joint Base Cape Cod is as big as some of the towns on Cape Cod. So they have a great amount of land, and that's what we need. In Hyannis, we can clean water faster than we can release water after it's clean. So what we really need is more land so that we can clean water and then release it safely into the ground.
Right. Joint
Base Cape Cod is going to give us that. And we have two options. We could either work closely with Mashpee or Sandwich or both so that we can get into the base from either direction.
All right, and this appropriation, this monies would go towards what?
This is the first phase, which will start to do some design to get sewer out to 28 so that we know we will either be taking it towards Joint Base or someday towards Hyannis. So it's not, it's well-spent money either way, but it's to bring pipes into Katuitt and then out to Route 28 for a directional. So it's step one in the process.
Right, and I know that the western part of town has always struggled with where are we going to go with this, because it's expensive either way.
Yes, well, you can't put big pipes there without lifters. You can't move sewer that far, and it's a very expensive process. And we know still in Hyannis we have the same problem. We can't expand too fast because we can clean at a rapid rate, but we can't discharge the clean water. So it actually makes sense to take the western part of the town and send it in another direction for discharging.
Excellent. And then we have the standard things for town council. So you got some appointments?
Yes, yeah, we're very fortunate. Our appointments committee is very active. We're always inviting everybody to come forward and step forward and consider giving your time to the very important boards that service our town.
Right.
So it's always a part of our process.
And any special things at the beginning of the meeting today?
Well, we unfortunately have just a little change in schedule. We originally thought we were bringing in a very highfalutin professional on microwaves, and he's an attorney in Boston, but he's asked that he be pushed off until the first meeting in March. We have a lot of discussions between the tower here, behind Town Hall, and certainly the tower in Centerville and other outreach areas. There are also a very big push by the communications group to put little dishes on every single telephone pole. And that is just an unsightly and an unrealistic way to answer the problem. We know we all need communications. We know we all need to get up to the latest and the greatest, but we have to find a sensible way to solve that in a community like ourselves, which depends on tourism, and, and maybe we're not at quite the same level of technology as some of the other parts of the Commonwealth, but we certainly are sensitive to our rights of way and what they'll look like at the end of the day.
Excellent. So we have Town Council, 7 p.m. tonight. Be there.
Don't miss it.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A mild winter has helped Blish Point Sand Restoration Maintenance Project stay on track.
Construction at Blish Point is well underway. With me today, Amanda Ruggiero, DPW engineer. This project kind of happened sooner rather than later. Give us a little indication of what happened at Blish Point.
Well, last year there were 3 major events that occurred, and they basically swiped away the sand that was covering these bags that stabilized the bank. When that happened, those were exposed, which is a huge vulnerability to Blish Point. So back in November, the town appropriated some funds, and we were able to expedite a bid package to get sand back onto the beach.
So when we talk about how this is kind of done, the actual damage, this is more of a maintenance project than a mitigation or adaptation program for climate change.
Correct, yeah. There's a monitoring and maintenance plan that was developed as part of the original construction in 2015. And when written in that part of it, it says that you'll have to restore the sand along the beach. On an annual basis, it would be minor, but if a major storm event happened and there was storm surge, then that would displace more of the sand. They would expect it to be about 5 to 7 years. Unfortunately, because of the major events we had, it's only been about 3 years.
Wow, that seems a little tough for residents there, because it's so vulnerable that you know, water is just coming through their neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the timeline, where are you in the construction project now?
So construction began in January. We were able to finalize a contract. We had an expectation that it needed to be completed by the end of January, and that hopes was that we would get all the sand placed before any major event happened. And we were able and were successful to get that portion completed by the end of January.
Okay. Are there other pieces of that project that will be scheduled?
Yes, the other parts of the maintenance would be to replenish the beach grass on the bank, and then the second part would be to put in a more robust snow fence, because the initial snow fence was washed away.
Right. Are there other vulnerable areas like this in the town of Barnstable?
Well, similar to Blish Point, Sandy Neck, they're also designated to be within the velocity zone designated by FEMA. So those are all susceptible to waves. So anyone within the velocity zone is susceptible. And Blish Point, because this solution is a soft solution, requires more maintenance to replace the sand.
Okay. And the funding mechanisms for something like this, is it just all on the town to try to do this, or were there other funding sources?
For the ongoing maintenance, that would be appropriated funds through the town. Like I said, the interval was expected to be a little bit longer, so the town now is evaluating the longer term items for this area, so that the cost for adding the sand, which is all sacrificial, can be kind of eliminated or mitigated and have another alternative.
Right. And will FEMA actually visit this site?
Yes, so the March storm of last year was designated under federal program, and they will be providing a site visit in the middle of February.
Excellent. Do you have a message for residents? I know that a lot of them were very concerned with whether the work was going to get done before the next winter hit. Mm-hmm. Do you have a message for them?
The DPW is continuing to explore different options and evaluate what is there. We will be, cognizant of the beach and, keeping an eye on that if anything needs to be replaced. At this point, the sand that has been placed is above the high water, so that sand should stay there. If a major event does happen, we'll be monitoring to see how much sand is displaced.
Excellent.
Opening a new restaurant can be a daunting endeavor. The town of Barnstable wants to help you be successful in the myriad of details, from licensing and permitting to passing your Board of Health inspections. We explore the new restaurant guide to get you ready to start cooking.
Opening a business in the town of Barnstable can be a daunting project at the least. Opening a restaurant, so many I's, so many T's to dot and cross. With me today, Economic Development Specialist Mike Travato with a brand new piece for restaurants that will actually make this process smoother and more informed so people can open their restaurants fairly quickly, not quickly, but at least easily in the town of Barnstable. This is a wonderful piece. So this guide is just released, right?
Yes, just released.
Just released. And why did you make it? Why did the town of Barnstable make opening a restaurant guide?
Sure. So the guide is a collaborative effort between multiple departments, the regulatory departments within the town, seeing a need to fill a need. Restaurants are much more daunting process to get open than most businesses because of all the regulations that are required to be overseen with them. And so the determination was made that it would be helpful to have a step-by-step guide to kind of help new restaurants through that process when they need to go and get permitted to open their business.
Okay, we're going to quantify this just a little bit. This would be somebody moving into an existing building that is either already been a restaurant or perhaps had been retrofitted for a restaurant, not necessarily complete and new construction.
It actually applies to all, Paul,
Okay.
but someone that's going to from A to Z with building a restaurant from scratch, it's going to be a more detailed process than ones that are going into an existing building that is specifically fit up for a restaurant, or even something that could be readily retrofitted without major renovation.
Okay, so let's talk about regulatory process and departments here. This is a collaborative effort. I mean, there's a whole lot of people involved in this process.
Absolutely. 7 different departments were involved in putting this guide together. Everything from the planning department, building, health, licensing, the fire department, water department, DPW. Hope I didn't miss anyone. And the health department, we're all involved in this process.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the process and what this guide will help a new business do.
Sure. So the idea on the guide is to help someone that's coming in right from the beginning. Hopefully can get them to go into a voluntary informal site plan review process where they can go into the room with all these different disciplines and talk to each of the departments about what their needs are going to be going forward so that they can fully understand the scope of what's ahead of them. And the guide gives them that step-by-step process with that.
Okay, let's take some of these departments on their own here. So if you're the building department, what's in this guide that's going to help me?
Sure. So the building department deals with building permits, sign permits, all the building codes that are going to be required relative to opening a restaurant, handicap accessibility, ADA compliance, and plumbing and wiring, among other things.
Okay, that's a hefty list in one department already, right?
Sure. And by the way, they're on the final end of the process too. I might point out that in order to open any business, the final step is to get a certificate of occupancy, and that's done through the building commissioner.
Okay, health. We're all really concerned with making sure that we are in a restaurant that's passed inspections and things like that. So, what are some of the things in the guide that will help with the health department?
Sure. So the health department deals with food licenses. They have to get a food license, a common victual license. I'm sorry, that's on the licensing side.
Right.
They weigh in on grease trap necessities. I'm sorry,
Right.
And all health code compliances.
Okay, and then licensing, here's another big one that seems to trip people up because they don't realize that they need specific things as they move through the process.
Sure. Food service establishments need a common victual license.
Right.
If you're doing entertainment, you'll need an entertainment license. If you're doing alcohol, you're going to need an alcohol license. So those are, if you're doing sidewalk dining on the town sidewalk, you'll need to get a sidewalk dining permit as well.
Okay, and planning and development, where do they fit into this process?
Sure. First and foremost, they help in zoning, whether that's an allowed use and where they want to locate. So they do the review on that to make sure. And also, if there is a need from any kind of a historic perspective, if they're in a historic district, planning department oversees the different historic boards as well. So for instance, if a restaurant's opening in downtown Hyannis, that's in the Hyannis Historic District. They would have to go in front of Hyannis Historic to get approvals for any facade changes or signage or even sidewalk dining kind of things.
Okay, that's interesting. And then water and fire departments, I thought this was kind of interesting. We're not talking just Hyannis, the rest of us, even in the mills eat. So we have restaurants too. But our water departments and our fire departments are a little bit of fragmented. So let's talk about water department first. There's some considerations when you're opening up a restaurant for water departments.
Sure. So for water, obviously we need to make sure we have sufficient water supply for you. So each of the water departments, depending on which jurisdiction you're in, would check to make sure that you have adequate water flow for that restaurant itself. I'll step over into the hot fire next.
Sure.
And again, same thing, depending on the jurisdiction. We have 5 fire districts, so the applicable fire department would be represented in that regard. They could be working at everything from sprinkler needs, fire suppression in the kitchen, near the range, hood requirements for ventilation in that regard, emergency exits, the typical fire safety needs that you would be required for a restaurant for public safety.
Right. So one of the things that I noticed about this right off the bat is that they are phone numbers for every department listed right there for you to pick up the phone and talk to folks.
Sure. This is obviously a real handy guide to give
Right.
you all that information right at your fingertips. You'll know which department you need to speak to, who you need to speak to. If you do go through that informal process, you'll get a face-to-face with each department, applicable person in that department who you will then become your point of contact, or they'll assign someone to you, and you'll know exactly who you need to talk to going forward in that regard.
Right. So let's talk about this a little bit. There's a position out there that is a coordinator for these site plans, these mini site plan meetings that you're doing, these informal meetings. Talk about that position. Is that the person who holds your hand through this process?
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Our site plan review coordinator is responsible for for the site plan review committee as administrative duties with the formal site plan review. So as part of that process, with our recommendation that even businesses, especially restaurants that don't need to go through formal site plan, they're welcome to have a meeting with the site plan review committee informally, in a conference room, to be able to talk all at once about what their needs are going to be. And by having this one person, in this case, Ellen Swiniarski does that work for us right now. And Ellen can help hold your hand through that process to help make sure you talk to all the right departments. Even if you don't sit down for that informal site plan review, she can at least direct you to who to talk to.
Right. And again, restaurants are so varied. You can make donuts, or you can make yogurt. I mean, they may have different things that they'll need through this regulatory process, depending, it's not a sit down or it's a sit down. So there's so many things to consider. What do you want residents and business owners to know about this process and how to get one of these guides?
Sure. Our advice is that you do take advantage of the opportunity to sit down in the room with all of our regulatory departments all at the same time, so you don't have to go one-on-one with them. It's going to save you a ton of time, but also make sure that you crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. So what the guide is designed to do is to kind of help give you an overview of that process. It's not detailed. It's not designed to be an everything, comprehensive guide. It really is a step-by-step guide to make sure you see all the proper people before you go and get your final certificate of occupancy. That's the bottom line. Is once you've gone through all your processes, building commissioner will issue you a certificate of occupancy so you can open your business so we can enjoy your food.
Excellent. And where can we get these guides?
The guides will be available first and foremost online at our businessbarnstable.com website.
Okay.
I believe it's also going to be on the town's website as well. But the hard copies will be available here at Town Hall, 367 Main Street, available at 200 Main Street where the regulatory offices are. We're also going to be distributing through the Chambers of Commerce, Business Improvement District, the village business associations, and also the commercial business brokers. I think they're a good resource to get this information in on the early end, because they're usually representing the businesses on the front end that are looking to open a restaurant.
Right. And I have to tell you that it's a really nice piece. It's very easy to read. The infographic is incredibly helpful. It shows people kind of where they start and how they navigate through this process. Well done, Mike.
Well, thank you, Paul. I can't stress enough how much of a collaborative effort this was between departments. To see such an interdepartmental collaboration in this thing was just tremendous.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks.
Here's a look at things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Chocolate. The annual Osterville Chocolate Fest is this Saturday, February 9th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Bring your sweet tooth, dress up your furry friends, and enjoy all the decadent chocolate events throughout the village and at Osterville Library. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you, I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.